On Sunday, Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, resigned following the Peter Mandelson scandal, saying in a statement that appointing Mandelson was wrong and that it damaged our party, our country, and trust in politics itself. This came despite Starmer saying only a few days beforehand that he had full confidence in McSweeney, whose political career has been closely intertwined with Starmer's for several years. Then, on Monday, Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, also resigned, saying, "I've decided to stand down to allow a new number 10 team to be built." And a few hours later, the leader of Scottish Labour, Anna Sarwar, called for Starmer to resign, saying, "The situation in Downing Street is not good enough." This piled even more pressure on Starmer, who continues to face questions over his political judgment. So in this video, we're going to explain why Starmer's downfall now looks inevitable, and consider how and when he could be toppled. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Let's get straight into it and explain why Starmer's downfall now looks inevitable. Essentially, we see three main reasons. First, the various resignations around him. Second, the apparent loss of confidence in Starmer among Labour figures. And third, the historical precedent for leaders being toppled after losing their closest aides. The first reason Starmer's downfall now looks inevitable is the various resignations of senior members of his government. On Sunday, Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, resigned, and on Monday, his Director of Communications, Tim Allen, also announced he would be leaving the government. The loss of McSweeney was particularly bad for Starmer. As many journalists and pundits have already pointed out, Starmer and McSweeney's political careers have closely aligned for a number of years, with some even going as far as to suggest that Starmer was the junior figure in the relationship. It was McSweeney that picked out Starmer, seeing him as a suitable figure to replace Jeremy Corbyn. It was McSweeney that convinced the left-wing Corbyn-supporting Labour members that Starmer was one of them, and it was McSweeney that drafted a 3-year plan for Starmer to achieve power, which culminated in one of Labour's largest victories in 2024. It's for these reasons that McSweeney was given unprecedented access in Starmer's government, and was often seen as, essentially, Starmer's Dominic Cummings. As such, for Starmer loyalists, McSweeney's departure is a huge blow, albeit a necessary sacrifice. It was hoped that the loss of such a senior figure would shore up the Prime Minister's position, providing a resignation to those demanding one, and silencing calls for the Prime Minister to follow. However, Starmer was already under pressure from Labour MPs, and seems to increasingly be losing the confidence of his own party. Even prior to the Mandelson scandal, Starmer was criticised for U-turning on several issues, from winter fuel allowance cuts to digital identity cards to a government-led inquiry into grooming gangs. The UK's slow economy has also hurt Starmer, with Chancellor Rachel Reeves struggling to stimulate growth and passing a so-called stealth tax at the most recent autumn budget that frustrated the electorate. On the international front, Starmer's Trump appeasement strategy also seems to have failed, with the UK securing very few concessions from the US, despite the rhetorical support Starmer has provided the US president. The result of all this has been a sustained 10-point polling deficit against Nigel Farage's Reform UK in general election polling. Fed up with his inability to turn the situation around, Labour MPs have reportedly been discussing privately how best to dislodge Starmer, with numerous reports of potential leadership challenges in recent months. The working assumption here was that a Labour challenger might move against Starmer in May, following the local Scottish and Welsh elections, all of which Starmer's expected to lose. However, after Labour's Starmer-aligned NEC blocked Mayor of Greater Manchester Andy Burnham from standing in Gorton and Denton following the resignation of Andrew Gwynn, a move that was widely seen as an attempt to prevent the proverbial fox from entering the henhouse, Starmer's critics were emboldened, with them suggesting that he was willing to lose the Gorton and Denton by-election, which polling suggested Labour would have won if Burnham was the candidate, in order to hold on to power. This added to the pressure on Starmer, and made a more immediate coup more likely. The third reason Starmer's downfall looks inevitable is the recent historical precedent. The past decade in UK politics has shown that sacking advisers isn't a surefire way to prevent attempts on your premiership. Following the disastrous 2017 general election, Conservative Prime Minister Theresa May sacked her advisers Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill, and what followed was a number of attempts to topple her, leading to her eventual resignation in 2019. Similarly, the premiership of May's successor, Boris Johnson, started to tank after Dominic Cummings quit in 2020 following a number of internal disagreements. As such, recent history suggests that Starmer could be about to suffer a similar fate. On Monday, Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar publicly called for the Prime Minister to resign. There were reports that this might have been followed by a number of other ministerial resignations, but cabinet ministers swiftly rallied around Starmer, putting an end to the immediate crisis. So, is this the end of the crisis? Will this demonstration of cabinet support be enough to put an end to the calls for Starmer to resign? Well, to be blunt, almost certainly not. It seems that one of the main reasons that Starmer hasn't yet actually faced any challenge is simply because his opponents are currently dealing with their own problems. Andy Burnham isn't in Parliament. Wes Streeting has been described as a protégé and close associate of Peter Mandelson, and Angela Rayner is still awaiting the conclusion of the HMRC inquiry into her tax affairs. There are still 3 critical junctures at which challengers could opt to move against Starmer. The publication of the documents related to the appointment of Mandelson as US ambassador, which threatened to further embarrass the government, the presumed loss of the aforementioned Gorton and Denton by-election, and the presumed loss at the local Scottish and Welsh elections. While it's hard to see a route for Burnham into Parliament, which he would need in order to challenge Starmer, it is possible that the country moves on from the Mandelson saga enough to accept a Streeting challenge, and it's possible that Rayner's HMRC investigation will be concluded at least one of these 3 junctures. If this is the case, or if another challenger decides at any of these junctures to mount a challenge against the Prime Minister, they would need to secure the support of 80 of their Labour colleagues in the House of Commons. At this point, an official leadership challenge would be triggered, with Starmer's name automatically on the ballot, and with the ballot being open to any other challenger who also secures the support of 80 other Labour MPs. While there are other ways of bringing Starmer down, notably via a cabinet revolt putting pressure on him to resign, or a vote of no confidence in the House, this would be one of the cleaner and more decisive ways to bring Starmer down, especially if he refuses to resign. In the end, though, it's easy to feel like the UK has a lot of problems and is divided on a number of different lines. So, in the latest issue of our magazine titled Disunited Kingdom, we explore that, taking a look at the different dividing lines in Britain today, from the growing political divide to the fracturing of the Union, the North-South divide, the gap between young and old, and many more. It's not all bleak, though. We also discuss what unites us and how Britain could be fixed. As always, this issue of Too Long features a whole lot more than just our disunited kingdom. We also have our full ranking of the world's most influential people, including profiles of some of the highest ranking people, including Donald Trump, Xi Jinping, Zoran Mamdani, the Pope, Mark Carney, and even Jeffrey Epstein. There's also the fragmentation emerging within the EU, an examination of social media bans around the world, and how religion is being used by politicians, and much more. You can pre-order your copy at toolong.news, or to get the best deal, you can just subscribe to the magazine. Doing so gets you 20% off every copy for the lifetime of your subscription, and if you use code SPRING26, you'll get an additional £3 off your first copy, bringing the price as low as £4.99. Find out more and order your copy today at toolong.news.